Alright, good evening everyone. My name is Phil Gallagher. I run Thraben University, a site for legacy, death, and taxes. And today we're going to plow through a league with Red Prison, Moon Stompy, whatever you want to call it. So I won last week's challenge with this deck list. I sat out this week's challenge. I'm sick. I took today off of work, and I'll be taking off tomorrow as well. But I figured I can take an hour to run through a league with Red Prison without straining myself too much. So I'm not going to do an extended deck tech on this. I just kind of want to highlight sort of what I'm doing with my build and sort of what I'm playing around with right now. So the build that I advocate of this deck right now, yes, to clarify, I didn't take down this challenge because I didn't play it. I did some D&T tutoring for someone instead. In all seriousness, though, the deck was really well positioned this weekend, and of the top 32, I believe 6 of them were Red Prison. So just saying, like, the deck's good, and I'm really surprised the people on Reddit weren't like, oh my god, 6 Red Prison decks, I blame Phil for this, it's all his fault. So I'm happy about that. But anyway, the version that I advocate playing right now is very aggressive. So it has the full, like, 8 Rabble Master effects, as well as a full playset of Trinispheres and 2 Lotus Petals to go and power them out. This is a sort of, like, much more aggressive take on the deck than we have seen a lot of times in the past. So many times in the past, we'll see, like, more ensnaring bridges and more planeswalkers, more main deck fiery confluences to have a better late game. This one is essentially saying, like, I am going to go and I'm going to try to win this game quickly, and there's very little that you can do about it. And then for the post sideboard games, we'll be a little bit more flexible. As far as the sideboard goes, I've been really on the fence as to what I want to do with the last 3 slots. So I'm really happy with 12 of my slots. So I think all these are locked in and are just, like, absolutely necessary and good. I'm very happy with all of those. And then these last 3, I have gone back and forth a lot as to what I want to play in this final slots. I've been messing around with Sulfur Elemental, Abrade, Sudden Shock, the 4th Bridge, Goblin, blanking on it, Goblin Crater Maker. I want a few more answers to creatures, and I've just been kind of torn as to, like, which exact cards I want to be playing, because each one of them overlaps in various matchups in different ways. So, like, another Abrade gives you more outs, not outs, but more answers to an opposing Chromox or Mox Diamond, both of which I've been seeing quite a bit of recently. And I like that. Sudden Shock's great against D&T. Sulfur Elemental is better against D&T, but Sudden Shock has, like, overlap in the Delver matchup. And Ensnaring Bridge is really good against the mid-range decks, especially, like, it gives you an out to things like True Name Nemesis and Gurmag Angler, which are otherwise hard to answer. I even considered, like, playing a Roast, honestly, just, like, 5 damage target creature, just, like, get them, to give me an answer to, like, Gurmags and Reality Smashers, but that might be me overreacting to just, like, losing to Gurmag Angler a few too many times in a row. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was the one who, like, walked Dylan through stuff on Twitter about the deck. I think he was the one I had sort of an extended conversation about the deck about. Yeah, he took my main deck, and he said he wanted to have something to, like, go and fight the fair decks. He wanted something more to fight against the fair blue decks of the format, and we decided on, like, Karn for those slots. So if I'm not mixing my people up, I believe he got 13th in the challenge, like, tweaking 2 of my sideboard cards and playing the same main deck. I didn't realize he wrote an article on it. I'll have to check that out, see what he has to say. But generally speaking, I don't think it matters too much, like, what you go and play in these last couple of slots. I think as long as you have some reasonable cards, like, the rest of the deck will carry you. The other card that's been bouncing in and out of here that I didn't talk about is, what is it? Hanawar Garrison? Yeah, this guy, which is like the honorary last Rabble Master. I considered putting one of these into the main deck over like a PNK and like moving the PNK to the sideboard just to have like more degenerate things to play early. But I haven't like quite pulled the trigger on something like that yet. Yep, so let's just like jump into a league. Engineered Plague on Goblin is not something that I've run into, but yeah, I guess that is a little rough. I haven't managed to get a 5-0 with this deck list yet. I have 4 or 5 4-1s now, but I haven't quite locked it up yet. Tonight's stream will be short. I'm not feeling great. I'm on some antibiotics now. Got some of that sweet, sweet codeine cough syrup. So that knocked me on my butt for most of today. So we're probably going to play against Delver. I don't know what I'm going to do on turn 1, but I'm going to do something degenerate. Okay. So, there's varying degrees of YOLO that we can do here. If Bob has, like, 0 counterspells, then I go Ancient Tomb, Chrome Mox, Imprint War Boss, Chrome Mox, Imprint Spirit Guide, Chandra plus Chalice on 1. This is pretty abysmal if he has a counterspell. But otherwise, it's sweet. So I should probably just Trinisphere this turn. And I guess I should have like Chrome Mox Spirit Guided first. I didn't really think this through. Because that would guarantee that I could play Chandra, but like this got the days, so I guess it's fine. That is a problem. Alright, so we're gonna lose this one to that wasteland. That's fine. I guess I could have like not cast the Trinisphere, but if I went for the Chandra, it would have been rough. Oh yeah, I already said I should have played the second Mox beforehand. Oh, I see. I think regardless of how I sequence that one, I'm just like not winning that one. Kind of with how the top of the deck is looking there. And that's fine. Alright, so we'll play Bridges, Abrade Sudden Shock, and we'll kind of trim some of the top end. A lot of times when I'm on the play, against this deck, I'll keep the Trinospheres, and then when I'm on the draw, I'll get rid of them. But I'm playing a little bit more removal than I'm used to. Like, I'm used to, like, boarding 5-ish cards. Now I'm going to be boarding 7-ish cards. So I might end up not playing Trinosphere even when I'm on the play. Excuse me. You play a split of Mountain and Snow-Covered Mountain for Predict. So if I cut the Trinospheres even when I'm on the play, I might be able to keep in Fiery Confluence and give myself additional outs to Young Pyromancer. Which might be fine. When you change a couple of the numbers for the sideboard cards in this deck, you change how you want to sideboard a little bit. So I'll probably trim a little bit of the expensive stuff. Like maybe I'll trim a Chandra, trim a Hazoret, and then trim 2 Maguses. Magus isn't just like a lights out card in this matchup, because your opponent can still just like lightning bolt it or play a Young Pyromancer or fetch an island and then play around it. But it's not a bad card by any stretch of the imagination. So this hand would go City of Traders, Lotus Petal, Blood Moon on turn 1. And not really have great follow-up. I'm going to keep it, but this is going to be a hand that will be soft to a Force of Will. Alright, they don't always have Force. The natural island there is a little rough. But that's what made the hand keepable, so it makes sense. I don't know that I will do anything with these Chrome Mox all game. I'd be willing to imprint a Blood Moon or a Magus on them, but I don't know that I'd be willing to, like, say, imprint a Goblin on them. At this point, I'm just going to hope to kill my opponent while they're stumbling. Oh, and Chimera, thank you very much for resubbing. I missed your notification there. I appreciate the support. Hey, Mill 2 Mountains. Seems like a good deal. Am I willing to play Bridge into Daze? Don't really want to do that. And I don't really need to, like, play this card yet. I'm not worried about it getting discarded. Yeah, I think I can wait on that. Both of these cards are good enough that I don't want to throw away either to the Chrome Mox, just in case that's not, you know, like, very clear here. Well, you don't have to play around days, and a lot of times it is just like correct to just like jam the first threat or two. But there's zero pressure on board. I have no reason to like just jam right now. If I draw a land, I will probably just like play the PNK into a daze and be okay with that. That was a shuffle off that ponder. Okay, the second Chandra doesn't do a ton. That's tough. Well, no, I can't play around days. Like I could like double Chrome Mox away two of these threats and then play around days. But City of Traders is a mountain right now. I'm not gonna play anything yet. So this one I'll use as bait. I don't really care about this. The remaining cards in my hand are all just better than this. That's fine. We'll still have like the bridge and Fiery Confluence. I'm hoping to nug another threat here in process. I don't know how likely that actually is. I've got kind of a hunch. I kind of think my opponent has a Spell Pierce. There was a hesitation on a turn a while back where they were considering tapping the island and then did not. So I'm going to play a bridge around a Pierce here. And then if I draw a land, I can also play Fiery Confluence around Pierce as a follow-up. Okay, that's good enough to get the force. That's fine. So again, we'll kind of make the same play. We'll play a bridge around a Pierce. A braid, a braid. That's fine. That was a force pitching a Daze. Alright, so now we get to play this around Pierce. Alright, so 2 damage to each creature, or 2 damage total to each creature, then 2 damage to my opponent. I kind of expect that there was some sandbagged threat here. My opponent hasn't been, you know, like really running through a lot of cantrips or anything like that. So there might be some amount of stranded discard, but it would make sense for there to be like a young pyromancer or another delver or something in there as well. Yeah, we've seen a lot of counterspells this game. So in the graveyard, there's Daze, Daze, Force, Force, then in Exile, there's another Daze, and a True Name. I feel pretty good about most of my spells resolving for the rest of the game, accordingly. Oh, there goes another Force. This is a surprisingly long match, by the way, for this specific matchup. Usually, things are pretty decided by about turn 5 in one direction or the other. Now we have a uncounterable answer to a Delver or Young Pyromancer, which is great. I don't need to just like fire this off aggressively at my opponent's life total or anything. I will when I've hit them a couple more times, but you would much rather have this as the finishing blow rather than like use it and then they're still alive and then later on you realize you need to like kill a creature. It just feels so bad when you like use a non-lethal fiery confluence. A braid? A braid. So I am more or less representing lethal. Because I can, like, Fiery Confluence. If I hit my opponent for 2, that puts my opponent to 8. Fiery Confluence deals 6, puts them to 2. Sudden Shock kills them. So we'll just go for the 6 damage to each opponent here. There is 1 Force of Will left. And Sudden Shock has split second, so that'll just do it. So we're about to go into Game 3 versus Grixis Delver. That. Ingrathis MTG, thank you very much for following. And congrats on your challenge finish. Good stuff. Yes, that is the secret flavor text of Sudden Shock. Well, I'll be keeping this one. Unclear what we'll do turn one because we have the possibility of like just slam turn one Blood Moon. We also have the possibility of like play Chalice on one and play it around a daze. It'll kind of depend on whether or not my opponent leads on Delver, and they do not lead on Delver. So I think I'm going to lead on Chalice because I can play that around a daze. If the Chalice sticks, I'm in good shape. If the Chalice doesn't stick and I get Wastelanded, that's when things are rough. Okay. So now it's the do you have Daze or Force question time again. If the answer is no, I have neither one of these cards, then like the clear play is like play Chandra minus, empty the board and clear some idiots. But I don't necessarily know that my opponent doesn't have Daze. So for example, if they have something like an Abrade in hand that can answer the Chalice, then like they don't necessarily need to Daze this. They can just play Young Pyromancer, then answer it and get way ahead on tempo. If I just Moon here, it actually might set me back quite a bit and keep me from emptying my hand. And Ensnaring Bridge is one of my great paths to victory right now. So I think the two lines to consider here are just like cold, Chandra minus, kill Young Pyro, which plays into Daze, or just like Rabble, kind of get aggressive, make them trade some resources with it, and play that around a Daze. I'm going to Rabble. Rabble doesn't leave the board empty. Let me rephrase that. Rabble puts more pressure onto the board. 100% willing to make this trade. Still leaves me with a body. And if my opponent just like goes and plays out another Young Pyromancer, it'll put us into a similar situation as to last turn. But one where I can potentially draw another land. It was a good Chalice. Or it was a good EE, for sure. Alright, so this one I'll just lose if I don't draw a land for another turn or two. And so be it, like that happens. But like, we definitely have the right tools to win this one. Yeah, Bridge, very important for True Name. Like, really our only out to that sort of thing. Chrome Mox would be one of my best draws here. City of Traders is an acceptable substitute. So I can just play out the Chandra, attempt to kill a Delver, gain 1 to 3 life by having them kill the Chandra, because it's like very necessary to do so. Or I can just like play the PNK and hope to gum up the board a bit. So the thing is that if I just play the bridge doesn't do anything now. I need to get some more cards out of my hand. So if I play this, this can buy some time. We'll see how much time. If the Delvers don't flip, a lot. If the Delvers do flip, What is this? Alright, well, still in the position where, like, a bridge getting into play would be optimal. But awkwardly still also in the position where my life total is under a large amount of duress. I can, like, ping some Delvers, but I don't really think I can use my mana in that way and hope to win this match. So I guess I need to... I can go City, Mountain, play Blood Moon, hope it resolves so that I can play a Mountain, get another card out of my hand. If the Delvers flip, I will double block, take 3, go to 6. I think if I lose the City of Traders, I'm in very, very bad shape. I can turn it into a Mountain, and that'll be okay. Alright, awesome. Excellent. Something that looks kind of weird here. I'm actually going to block with my PNK. Maybe that's not true. I was going to say, like, I can block both Delvers, but blocking Garmag Angler is just better, so I can leave myself the PNK to do that next turn. Yeah, I can just block with the Thopter. That's fine. Alright, Chrome Mox is a stellar draw. That means I can play the bridge around a daze while also getting another card out of my hand. Alright, so we'll lose to, like, Pierce or Force here. Yep. It's very unfortunate. It is what it is, though. Not much I can do about it. We'll hope to draw another. Sorry, I'll drag that back. No, we're not really in a position to, like, wait any longer on the bridge in order to play that around a Pierce. You can't play scared of everything. Alright, so we're hoping for yet one more turn of the Delvers somehow not flipping. Alright, we'll die to that. That's fine. You'll lose a lot of games to Grixis Delver, where they can just go and counter your first like 2 to 3 cards that really matter. But you win a lot of the games where like your first or second card resolves. That's kind of how a lot of the matches versus the blue decks go. If about 2 of your business spells get countered, you're out of luck. If they don't, you probably win. All right. So what does my hand do? My hand goes Mountain, Chrome Mox, Imprint, probably P and K, and I can slam either a Rabble Master or a Blood Moon on turn 1. So we will keep this hand. My opponent has finishes with Grixis Delver and Miracles and Grixis Control recently. I will need a mana source in order to play a follow-up card for this. So we have like 2 permanent mana and 1 temporary mana. So I can either just like play Goblin Rabble Master, hope to clock my opponent on whatever they're doing, or play Blood Moon and hope that it screws them and buys time. And I'm going to lean towards playing the Blood Moon on turn 1. Do, 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 do. Note that I don't really value P and K very highly in my opening hands with this deck when I don't know what my opponent is playing. That might be indicative of something like Black-Red Reanimator as well. But it doesn't really matter. We don't really have lines right now. We kind of have one plan. All right. So a lot of games go like this, where you see like 1 card or 0 cards, and you have to decide how you want to sideboard. So like, my opponent has played both Grixis Control and Grixis Delver recently, and like Bloodstained Mire is very much something that could be in like either of those decks. It could also just be indicative of any number of decks in the format. So we probably won't sideboard too much. Yeah, I'm very close to cutting the P and K myself. It's fine. Like, there's a lot of times when you're playing against control decks and it's just like super, super annoying. And like, great. But it's probably my most pitched like singleton. That's not really fair because I have like 2 singletons. It's one of my most pitched cards to Chromox. They're probably just going to be Grixis Control, which I don't really like board all that much for. So I probably won't even just like board anything. I will probably just whack the submit button and like run this back, or maybe like board 1 or 2 cards. Given the objective power level of this deck, a lot of times if your opponent sideboards and you don't sideboard, you still end up being favored in a lot of those cases. So this is a turn 2 Chandra hand. But it's a turn 2 Chandra hand where I have, like, nothing else going for me. So I'm going to ship this one and just try to find something that can do something quicker. This is fine. Okay, how do I feel about this mountain? I don't think I want it. If I'm playing against Grixis control, then my turn 1 is like City, Spirit Guide, Chandra, Chandra plus, get rid of the top card of my library. The thing that the mountain will do is that if my turn 1 Chandra does not resolve, the mountain will let me cast either Magus or War Boss on turn 2. But I think I'm going to bottom this and go for the scenarios where I do the sweet things. I think that's a close scry. I also just like have plenty of other mana sources in the deck that I can hit to cast either one of these next turn anyway. Maybe that means it's better to go and leave it on top. But honestly, there's also plenty of situations where, like, based on what my opponent does, I pivot the way that I play this opening hand out. This is actually very good, because it lets me turn a Spirit Guide into a permanent source of mana, rather than just a temporary one. And that means I do have, like, the 100% follow-up to the stuff that goes on later on. Alright. Show me Force of Will. That's a good sign for me. Ooh, baby. I'm in a great, great, great position now. Ooh, boy. Ooh, boy. I have all the choices. I think I'm going to plus my Chandra first. I can't get to 6 mana this turn, so, like, let's just, like, plus see what's there. It may simplify my decision a lot. Because if I get something that I can cast that's respectable, I probably will just cast it. I don't love playing the Blood Moon. If I play the Blood Moon, it takes me off of my 3rd natural mana. So I'm not going to cast that. I'm just going to go ahead and cast the Trinisphere here. We're going to make it so that, like, multiple cards can't, like, dig my opponent out of the situation they're in. This is no longer a Blood Moon game. Like, my opponent has their first 2 basics already, and there's really diminishing returns on the basics after that. This is just a game where, like, Chandra is continually going to pressure them. It's not going to ultimate, but the 2 damage a turn plus the cards that it like, effectively draws me, it's quite good. What do we exile there? City of Traders. Now we'll just play a Legion War Boss and start pressuring their life total from another angle. So even if Chandra isn't drawing us cards, now there's a real body, there's an incentive to leave Baleful Strix back. Although there is also the danger that I've given my opponent a good K command target. Yep, there we go. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. I can't cast that currently, so no. And we'll play out one Rabbly Boy. Sure, that's fine. The problem has not been solved. This Chandra is not going anywhere in the immediate future. Opponent does have a non-basic swamp, or a second basic swamp, rather. That's very good to know about for future games if we end up going there. Alright, so we can cast a Lotus Petal so that if I get a Fiery Confluence off the top, I can cast that. Ooh! Do I want to cast this card? There is a very real chance that the 2 damage that this provides is just better than casting it. I don't really foresee myself needing to stop anything that they can play at 1 or 2. Like, this just essentially stops... Like, if I cast this, I'll cast it on 2 to stop, like, Snapcaster and Baleful Strix from coming in order to, like, pressure my Chandra. I don't think I cast this, but I think it's very close. So, I'm most afraid of my opponent having something like a Gurmag Angler in their deck. Or a True Name Nemesis, although they don't have the second blue up to do that now. Multiple Baleful Strix could also be annoying. Alright, no shuffle there. We might see a Lily minus in order to just, like, clear the top cards of the library here. Yep, there we go. There's the Gurmag Angler I'm scared of. So we'll see whether or not I'm going to be able to close this one out. I'm going to have a lot of lethal burn one way or another. So even if this Chandra eats it, I'm not super worried about just, like, losing the game. But, like, an avenue to loss has appeared. I will not cast that. I will just take the damage. That's a very aggressive little... that makes sense now. Alright, so my Chandra's going to go down here. But all we need to do is 3 damage. There's more than 3 damage. We even get to, like, play it around like a Pierce effect. Hardcast Force would be brutal. So there we go. Again, one of the cards that I highlighted at the beginning of the stream that is like kind of obnoxious to be on the other side of the battlefield is that Kermet Gangler. Since most of our removal does 3 or less damage, or 4 or less damage in the case of Chandra, you sometimes just can't answer that card. All right, no data on what my opponent is doing. I'll be keeping this hand. It will do something degenerate on turn 1. Island Ponder. So this will probably mean that, like, since my opponent already has a basic, that I'll open on Trinisphere. If my opponent's a combo deck, great. If they're a control deck, great. It means that, like, the Blood Moon will resolve next anyway. I'm going to imprint a Magus. And I'm going to think about my line for a second. So if my opponent's something like a Stoneblade deck or a Miracles deck, I might actually cut them off in their second color by playing the Blood Moon now. But if I play the Trinisphere now and it resolves, it does sort of mean that, like, my next cards will also resolve. But if they're playing something like Miracles or Stoneblade and I let them get their second color here, I do really lose out on the power of this card. So I'm going to change my mind and play the Blood Moon first. This is significantly better if there's something like Stoneblade where they are reliant on that second color, and it will mean that I won't just, like, die to plain Stoneforge, which might just happen anyway. Fuck, alright. Note that regardless of how we sequence this, if my opponent, like, starts on both Island and Plains and has Stoneforge all just, like, naturally or off of that Ponder, this opening either way is not going to beat this. We have a great deal of trouble beating Batterskull with this version of the deck because we don't have the main deck bridges. So in order to beat this, I will need, like, a Fiery Confluence to, like, destroy it and probably the Stoneforge at the same time. Note, my opponent is very basic heavy. They've naturally drawn, 3 basics, no fetches involved. Note, this card is not able to be played out safely right now. The little goblin buddies, they have to attack into Batterskull, which is vigilant, and it's rough. So now I do have the line available to me of, like, double block the Batterskull, but that's not really appealing because my opponent can either just, like, draw a 5th land and equip it to the Stoneforge. Why would you even do that now? Yeah, I guess, like, there's Trinisphere to respect, but, like, if I go for the double block and you Swords 1, it's a huge tempo swing. Maybe that's indicative that they have a counterspell or something that they want to hold mana up for. It's a Simian Spirit Guide, friend. It's not worth a counterspell. Note, I do only have 2 main deck confluences, so I'm not playing towards very many cards here. I'm not going to take a block yet. If I draw a Chandra, having a couple things on the board to protect it is very nice. But I'm on slim margins for this game. Actually, so I think I'll play a post-combat Legion War Boss. With the intention of either jump blocking or going for a gang block on the Batterskull to get rid of it. Don't even have bridges to draw towards in the main deck, so I'm pretty dead here. So now I'll begrudgingly do the double block, try to get rid of the Batterskull. I don't really know if this is like going to work one way or another. Even if I like trade for it, just like equip to the Stoneforge is just lethal next turn. Yeah, you do not want to play Red Prison in a metagame full of Stoneforge Mystics and basic lands. Stoneblade and Death and Taxes are both very, very difficult matchups. We'll probably end up boarding quite a bit for here. Like, we'll want the bridges, the confluences, the abrades, and the sudden shock is okay. It's not good. Like, you don't love playing this, but it's something that can stop the Batterskull from hitting play in the first place, which is probably fine. So, in these matchups, it's weird, but you end up boarding out, like, a huge majority of your threats. Because they're just, like, so bad against Batterskull, you end up cutting your War Bosses and your Rabble Masters, and, like, that's 8. So this is why the Sudden Shock is going to be coming in, is to make the numbers work. When you're on the play, you can be more aggressive, and you can, like, try to mise some games like this. Blink, with the number of basics that they saw naturally without fetching, I'm under the assumption that they are traditional blue-white Stoneblade rather than blue-white Delver. Mulligan. I can't do anything with that. Can't do anything with this. Well, I'm going to keep this one. We are all in on a turn 1 Magus of the Moon, though, which sucks. It sucks because, like, A, it's a weak hate card, and B, like, plain Swords to Plowshares or Force of Will blue card just ruins his hand. Yeah. So now I probably can't win. Like, I can keep playing. I can hope to just, like, have another bomb on the top. But after mulliganing that deep, the damage is done here. I'm likely going to be playing towards an Ensnaring Bridge win at this point. I also don't know why people want to play this blue-white Delver deck. I think it is very bad. Like, I know, like, it's very well positioned against Red Prison, but I have never considered like this blue-white Delver deck to be a viable choice. Force will be very hard to beat. Alright, that would explain some of it. That's actually stellar. It's particularly good, like, because I know they have Force of Will. So we're going to need multiple bombs here. Why wasn't I teaching class today? Because I'm very clearly sick. There's a difference between being able to stream for an hour to keep this, this sort of thing going and live, and being able to work for 8 hours, and also operate a motor vehicle during the middle of the day. I'm on some relatively strong medication right now, trying to get whatever this cough thing I have knocked out is. Yeah, I wonder if this blue-white Delver has a couple of, like, very good matchups, sort of like this one. That's kind of like why it's good right now. So, if I cast this Ensnaring Bridge, it's just going to get countered. But I think I need to cast it so that it gets countered, so that if I draw another card, that one can resolve. Which I know is kind of weird, but I'm not going to have the mana to cast this plus another card in one turn anytime soon. So I think just, like, respecting my life total, I have to let the bridge go. So we're looking to draw a Braid, Fiery Confluence, Bridge, Chandra, that'll do. Rabble Master or something, probably too slow at this point. Pierce is lame. Yeah, there's a virus going around Roanoke that usually lingers for 3 to 4 weeks. All right. See, that one resolves. Nice. And I've had it for about 3 weeks, but I'm just, like, not shaking it off. So I finally, like, gave up and took the day off to go to the doctor. Got some of that sweet cough syrup with codeine in it, which is amazing. It, like, really, really does the job. But it also just, like, knocks you unconscious. Like, I took it and I thought I was fine, and then, like, 45 minutes later, I couldn't feel my legs, and I went to bed. So, that disenchant's actually pretty annoying. Mostly because it means that I might end up losing some of my lands. And that will be dead if the Delver flips. But if the Delver doesn't flip, my opponent might just be dead to most of my top decks. Like a Chandra, Fiery Confluence, I don't have another Sudden Shock, a Magus, if my opponent fetches, any Rabble Master effect would have them dead. I'll die to a Brainstorm. Alright, so I die to Snapcaster Brainstorm unless my opponent has no instants or sorceries in hand or in their top 3 cards, which is extremely unlikely. Alright. I've lost most of my matches to this deck. It's very difficult for me to beat when I am on Red Prison. I really conceptually don't like the deck building that's going on there. Because, like, Jace in the Daze deck, Snapcaster in the Daze deck, like, I don't love those deck building decisions. So this is a very average hand where I would probably just try to aggro my opponent out by doing like turn 2 Rabble into turn 3 War Boss or something like that. And a lot of times when I'm on the play, I try to go for a turn 1 hand. Like this is not a bad hand, but I think I can do better. I like this hand less, but I'll keep it on 6. This hand becomes better probably if I get a follow-up 3-drop off the scry. I will put that on top. It overlaps a lot with Trinisphere in terms of functionality. But if the Trinisphere gets countered, I'll be very glad to have that. Alright, so probably playing against Blue-Black Shadow, in which case both of these cards are very strong. I think I'm going to play a Chalice this turn, because I can play it around a Daze or the little, like, Ferocious counterspell. Alright, and my opponent has conceded. Good stuff. Alright, so we should probably assume they're Blue-Black Shadow since we saw them cycle the Street Wraith. Seems correct to me. So that probably means that I'll want the Ensnaring Bridges. And, like, then there's, like, cards that I can board in. Nope, we're lagging. There's cards that I can board in, and we'll just, like, kind of see how many things I have that I actually, like, actively want to play against them. So what are my weakest cards here? There's kind of this, like, pressure between Fiery Confluence being great and absolute garbage. In the hands where they damage themselves just an absolute ton, the Confluence is a great top deck out to just finish off the game. But generally speaking, it's not going to sweep their creatures off the board, and it's slow. So a lot of times I end up getting rid of this. I also frequently get rid of my Trinispheres when I'm on the draw versus Delver decks. I know that it's very, very powerful, but so is the rest of the deck. So it doesn't necessarily have to be Trinisphere, because a lot of times when you're on the draw and you don't, like, Moon on turn 1, you just get, like, a Soul Land wastelanded, and then your own Trinisphere locks you out of the game. And I don't really love that. So that means that I would need to board in 2 more cards or keep some of my Confluences in. Yes, I can say subscribe to PewDiePie. That is something that I can say. But I would not actually advocate that. There are good quality content producers, and then there's whatever you want to call PewDiePie. I think it's pretty close between, like, wanting, like, a Scab Clan or 2, just as a ridiculous clock, and a couple of Confluences. I think I'm going to play the Confluences when I'm on the draw. And then when I'm on the play, I'll probably play the Scab Clans or put Trinispheres back in. Note, this is another one of those matchups where, like, having something like, say, a Roast just, like, a 2-mana card that can answer a Gurmag Angler would be pretty big. All right, what am I doing with this hand? So I go Mountain, Mox, imprint one of the goblins, Lotus Petal, play a Chalice around a Daze effect. That's probably fine. That's good enough to keep this hand. If my opponent plays a discard spell, I'll probably lose the Chalice. But that's probably not the end of the world. A lot of times, like, the nice thing about this deck is even when your opponent, like, takes the plan A out of your hand, a lot of times, like, plan B is just like, well, I guess I'll just cast a 3 or a 4 turn clock. And that's pretty solid. Ooh. I don't think that's going to change what I do this turn. I think I want to play that next turn to allow me to, like, play whatever one of these I don't imprint. I could, like, play this turn and, like, very, very easily play around a Daze effect, but I can already just do that with my resources. So I think I'm just going to, like, sequence in a way that's better for me long term rather than better for me short term. It will mean, like, quote unquote, throwing away one of my cards in order to turn it into a mana source. But I think that's okay. This was also a turn where I could choose to pivot and just, like, plan on going turn 1 Rabble Master into turn 2 War Boss, and that would be fine as well. Alright, so we've successfully played around a Daze, drawing out a Force of Will instead. We've got, like, the best card in the matchup at our disposal if it doesn't get, like, Thought Seized or Hymned away. And I can probably play that and Rabble Master if I draw a mana source. Surgical Extraction on Chalice of the Void. Friend, I don't know why you're playing that card, but you've got it. You've got it. Alright, so I get to play one of Rabble Master or Bridge this turn. Obviously going to play the Bridge now. I don't think they're going to have double Daze. They only have 3 Dazes remaining in deck, so I'm not going to play around double Daze. Doing so is just, like, bad for me long term. Note, Blue-Black Shadow might not be able to answer this card. Just, like, hard stop. I don't know if they're playing anything like an Echoing Truth right now that would allow them to do so. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess I could, like, blow my Lotus Petal this turn and just, like, cast both of these and put them both on the board. Is that fine? Is there anything that punishes me for doing that? Not really. I'll still have 5 mana, so I'll still be able to play a 4-drop around a Pierce. That's an unusual Daze. Does that, like, enable a Fatal Push? Is that what's going on here? Is it leaves the battlefield? Okay. Alright. Makes sense. Good line from my opponent. So I can exile this spirit guide in order to start, like, collecting goblins that can just, like, beat around the bridge. But I think I'd rather have this to play a 4-drop around a daze. So I think I'm just going to let my goblins die here. I feel very confident that, like, I've got the win inevitably here. So I don't think I need to get too short-sighted. Excuse me. You know, if I land a Blood Moon, then, like, my opponent doesn't get to play Magic anymore. Plus, just, like, on a turn where I draw a land, I can just, like, cast this as a 2/2 that may eventually attack. Alright, so they do have an out to bridge. But it's probably going to be too slow. So let's see. I can attack with Legion Warboss and the token, deal 2 damage, put my opponent to 5, Chandra plus, put them to 3, then have them dead in 2 Chandra pluses. Alternatively, I can just keep Legion Warboss back, but I don't think that's really necessary. I think I can just, like, accept literal 2 damage as a damage push here. Sure. But, like, what kind of meme review do I need to say? Am I supposed to be, like, campy? Or am I supposed to just, like, straight face it? There's not so much a single best deck, so much as there's sort of like a small-ish tier 1 where there's, at any given time, 3 or 4 decks that are probably your best choices for the tournament. All right, then here's your clip. Meme review. I think Sneak and Show is very good at the moment. I think it is probably one of the better choices for a combo deck. Right now, very specifically, because it deals with Red Prison very well. Like, it's a deck that can ignore Chalice and, like, Blood Moon effects relatively easily. So, Sneak and Show gets my vote for one of the better combo decks right now, unquestionably. If I were more confident in my abilities as a Sneak and Show player, that's something that I might, you know, say, play in a Legacy Challenge. We saw 6 of the top 32 deck lists in the Legacy Challenge having, like, being this Red Prison archetype. So, like, it's obviously quite good. Historically, I personally have played a traditional sideboard with the deck rather than the wish board. The wish board's much better against things like Death and Taxes. The wish board is good where Omniscience is good. So when you have the ability to just, like, lean on Omniscience to win games, that's one of your better board plans. But a lot of times when you play Omniscience, you play cards that are very clunky when you don't have Omniscience. So you end up playing slower cards like Cunning Wish and Intuition, which when you're paired against, say other combo decks, like you often don't have time for those cards. So like it's a real trade-off. All right, what am I doing? So I can go. This is probably an aggro hand. I'm going to be keeping this one way or another. So the question is, like, am I just going all in on Rabble into War Boss, or do I want to play Trinisphere on turn 1 first? And I don't know, the decision is very difficult. If my opponent's on a fair deck and the Trinisphere just resolves, then like I will have time to go like Rabble War Boss and still kill my opponent very, very easily. But if they're on a Wasteland deck and I go like Trinisphere and I get Wastelanded, I'm super boned. So this will imprint the Spirit Guide. I'm gonna play the Trinisphere. But let the record show, if I get Wastelanded, I brought this on myself. I think Sneak and Show is a great deck to have in your back pocket. I've played it a little bit, mostly in like local paper leagues. The deck has a lot of objective power level. I've just never felt great with my results with the deck. Like every time that I borrowed it on Magic Online, I've just gotten crushed. So like I feel like I'm good enough with Sneak and Show to beat the crap out of like my locals and like casual Legacy players, but I'm not good enough with it to like beat the grinders who like know the game plan, know how to mulligan properly for the matchups and whatnot. I just feel like I'm going to lose to those sorts of players. This is probably not going to be surprising to anyone, but historically I've also really liked Sneak and Show because I can just like jam Blood Moons into the sideboard, and I just treat Blood Moon as a 3-mana win condition. That's very easy, Blink. If I Blood Moon, I don't have 3 mana anymore. So like that's the short version. The longer version is that like before my opponent can cast anything, I just want to try to kill them. So like I get to resolve Rabble Master into second Rabble Master, and that's a ton of pressure. All right, so we see 2 blue fetches. I'm probably going to board out my Fiery Confluences and just board in a couple more creatures, not really knowing what my opponent's doing. If they're a combo deck, then I'll be like super happy to have brought these in. If they're not a combo deck, like it's not like this is a bad card. So I'll probably just kind of like hedge a little bit towards being a little aggressive when I don't know what my opponent's on. Like this could just be a combo deck like Show and Tell. This could be a Stoneforge Mystic deck. It could be Miracles. In the absence of information, just try to get them dead and then adjust for game 3. So I don't love this. I also don't know if I'm going to throw it back. especially after my opponent mulligans. If I have not land on top, I'm pretty happy with this hand. But I'm a little slow. And maybe I'm trying to just do something degenerate on turn 1. Let's fish. This hand's better. Open Scribe. Basically any functional card to the top. Any mana source will go to the bottom. To the bottom with you. Alright, we are playing against Delver. Our hand is quite bad versus Delver. So I could not Trinisphere this turn in order to Chandra next turn, but I didn't come here to not cast Trinisphere, you know? So probably your top control deck right now is either going to be Grixis, Delver, or Miracles. Sort of goes back and forth week to week, which one of those is better. Your best aggro deck right now is going to be Grixis, Delver. And your best combo deck's a little bit debatable right now. But Black-Red Reanimator can produce a Grizzlebrand, you know, a 7/7 life-linking card that lets you draw 7 cards on turn 1. So maybe that one. If you're sort of interested more generally in sort of like a longer list of decks to beat, this link from the source has sort of like the primer to each one of like the most popular sort of decks of the format right now. Burn did get a good buff. I agree with that, and it has seen play online, like substantially more play. I've queued it into it multiple times over the weekend, whereas normally like Burn something I run into once every few weeks. This is probably game ending. I think I need to do this. I don't think I can win if my opponent plays out another card that matters. So, like, it super sucks to throw away the Chandra because I don't have a ton of removal right now. But I don't think I can deal with, like, another Delver hitting the board. And I don't really know that I can just beat my opponent cantripping towards counterspells either. Let this be a lesson that Wasteland is still good versus the Blood Moon deck. Note that if I were to draw like back-to-back goblins, I could probably still race my opponent. Let me confirm. So I'll be at 9. I would draw a goblin, attack for 3, put them to 15. I go to 6. I draw a goblin. I do 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Alright. Not looking good for the home team here. So it's actually possible I should have held that so that if I draw a Chandra, I can, like, Chromox imprint this next turn. So that I can actually, like, cast my removal spell. So it might have been a misplay. My PNK in my sideboard. My PNK is in my sideboard. So if I draw exactly Chandra, I will be punished for the line that I took. Alright, dead. So we got that one surprisingly close, but the Wasteland on the Ancient Tomb set us back too much. So now we know what we're playing against, and we can mulligan properly for game 3. Note, I still don't exactly know which flavor of Delver I am playing against, but our sideboarding for all of them is probably going to be pretty similar. So we'll pull these Scab Clans back out. I may or may not actually Trinisphere. We'll kind of see how I'm feeling. So I might put the P and K back in just because, like, it is something that can gum up the board and create multiple blockers for Gurmag Angler or Delver. It can also just be a removal spell for small creatures. But I'm not, like, in love with the card or anything. Yeah, I have to decide whether or not I want to play the Trinispheres when I'm on the play. A lot of times I do. I'm a little nervous because, like, I don't know which flavor of Delver they are. And if they are this, like, stupid blue-white Delver, the Trinispheres are, like, very noticeably worse against them. I think I'll play them. Did we see a Volk? Yeah, I guess we did see a Volk. Okay, so they are Grixis. Then I will play the Trinispheres. And I often end up, like, trimming a Magus of the Moon because, like, they can still Lightning Bolt it, so it's not a hard lock piece against them. This is also 61. So I'll cut one of these. Or did I cut? No, I didn't cut a second Magus yet. I'll cut a second Magus. Well, I'll be keeping this. It's a very strong opener. There are a couple of ways to play this out. So I can go Mountain, Chrome Mox, Imprint something, and Spirit Guide and Blood Moon on turn 1 if I want to, like, kind of try to play around a Wasteland. But if the Blood Moon actually resolves, then I already play around Wasteland in the first place, so that's kind of a moot point. And that's what I'm going to be hoping for, is the Blood Moon resolving. I assume that my opponent, like, is obligated to keep a hand with Force of Will when they're on the draw. Nope. We did not see AC. I think we have seen, what was it, like Flooded Strand and Polluted Delta as the fetches. There's a black source. So now we get the clock as follow-up. This can just get like bolted and died. Opponent does have mana to do that. So this isn't like guaranteed or anything. But if they don't have the bolt here, or they don't counter this, I am in a very, very, very good position. All right, force pitching a Daze. That's good. That means they don't have like a basic island currently. If they just tap out for a Young Pyromancer, I'm going to need to sudden shock that before any tokens are made. So that's like so good for me. We don't need to hold this for mana. This is our win condition now. It's good enough. You would like to abrade my Mox? Sure. I'll float a mana. Good job. I might be more worried about getting pecked to death if I were them, and like use that to remove a real threat, but maybe they have multiple? Unclear. They have multiple. I don't really need to cast Lotus Petal. Just pass the turn here. It's not like my opponent is going to like him and take it. The turn counter is going to tick up a bit in this one, but I don't expect the game state to change all that much. I'm just going to do this the second that I have priority. I don't want this on the board. Yeah, most of my deck is live. Like, my non-mana sources are very scary. Keep this Lotus Petal in hand. Just, like, thinking about potentially, like, drawing an Ensnaring Bridge and wanting to have a card in hand towards, like, letting my Magus of the Moon attack or something like that. It may sound weird, but, like, a 2/2 is a fine top deck at this stage, right? Like, this is just a clock. It will get them dead. When, you know, 90% of the cards that they draw don't matter. It doesn't matter what threat you have. You know, you can kill them with an artifact that says, like, tap this, deal 1 damage to a target creature or player, and, like, that would get the job done. That's why historically, like, some of these decks were, like, winning with, like, Rakdos Pit Dragon. It doesn't matter what you win with. Just something that deals damage is fine. It doesn't matter what it is when your hate cards carry this hard. That's great. I'm not going to play that out yet. I'm just going to hold that in hand. Yes, thank you. Rod of Ruin control. That is exactly the sort of thing I had in mind. I think that's poor play from my opponent. I think if I draw like a Rabble Master or an equivalent here, they would really, really rather have that around. Okay, so now it's time to start locking up the game. So we'll play the Trinisphere here as sort of like the bait spell, so to speak. And then we'll play the bridge. It can still get forced. Like, my opponent still has like 3 mana in order to do so. But the number of outs my opponent has now is it's low. They have something non-traditional like a ratchet bomb or something. That's great. Otherwise, they're in pretty big trouble. So note that with Ensnaring Bridge, I kind of get to play like Sword and Shield. So I can go and like draw a card, attack for 1 with a Goblin, and then play a land or whatever out so that I get to like sneak a little damage in each turn. While my opponent still can't attack. And I'm going to go ahead and hold this land. That way, if I draw a 2-drop, that's one of my like 2/2s, I have the possibility of playing it, drawing another card, and then attacking with it. But once you have 2 lands in hand, like, you play out the other one so that you don't put yourself into a situation where just like hitting running lands for too many turns in a row means that some other creature can slip in and attack. Yeah, I mean, like, we essentially have Dryad Arbor Beatdown going on right now. Ooh, opponent throwing away Gurmag Anglers. That doesn't feel good. That means that they don't have any basic swamp or equivalent in deck. Did we actually draw poorly, though? Like, let me like legitimately ask that as a question. I don't think we did, right? We've drawn 2 Rabble Master effects. We've drawn 2 Moon effects, a Trinisphere, and a Bridge. Like, maybe we're a touch heavy on the mana side. But I think we're, at worst, drawing averagely. Oh, sure. Most of the strength was in our opening hand. That I do agree with. That was a Force, pitching a Spell Pierce. Getting the beat down on our opponent here. So, Young Pyromancer is the scary card from our opponent. That's something that can spiral out of control and take over this game. Luckily, we're a master. And note they can't like counter to protect this because of Trinisphere. So I believe they lost a life to Force and also lost a life to my Goblin, which is why their life ticked down by 2, if you looked away for a second there. And my opponent has had enough. They have realized that we've got strong inevitability on our side now. I'm somewhat surprised they played it out for as long as they did, but like they do very much still have outs in their like Young Pyromancers. So that was about an hour and a half to do a league. That's pretty typical. I've been sitting at home a lot the last couple of days, and so I've been playing a bunch of leagues, and they don't always go well. The Red Prison leagues tend to go like really well or really terribly. It is a deck that's a little bit dependent on what matchups you hit. So like you saw, like when we got paired against Stoneforge Mystic, it just felt abysmal. Like it's very hard to win those matchups. But when you get paired against like the combo decks that are really prevalent on Magic Online right now, being the Chalice Trinity or Blood Moon Magus deck, is just absolutely disgusting. Yeah, like that was a long week. Like when I'm playing on my own, a league is about an hour, which is just like crazy. But like if you think about our match with Bob, like we played Grixis Delver versus Red Prison twice, and like in our match versus Bob, I think like the turn counter was up to like 16 or something absurd like that. And this one was pretty long as well. Those are atypical. Most of my games are just over on turn 1 or 2. To just be completely honest, that's kind of like the objective power level of the deck. The games where you win, you play very, very few turns of Magic. Or, at the very least, you play a handful of turns, but you're F6 through most of them. So it's very speedy. So one thing you probably saw is that, like, it is very possible to lose to Delver. It's just very possible to lose to early aggressive threats, which is why I've gone up to a couple more removal spells in my sideboard and why I went up to the 4th bridge. So in the initial version that I won the challenge with, I had Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Sulfur Elementals, and I think I had 1 Abrade in the first place. So I had like a Grafdigger Cage and 2 Sulfur Elementals in these slots. And I just don't think you can hedge specifically for D&T. Like Sulfur Elemental does a very, very good job of that, but I think you need more generic cards in the sideboard. And if you're not going to play the bridges in the main deck, you need the bridges plus a few other removal spells. So I don't think you have slots for Sulfur Elementals in this version. Now, if you're playing the more traditional Prison version with like more Planeswalkers than the Bridges main deck and a few more Fiery Confluence main deck, then maybe you have a few more sideboard slots to work with, and so you can go and squeeze in a couple of Sulfur Elementals into the sideboard without like really hurting your other matches. But I think a little bit of early removal of some nature is important. Again, I don't know like what the split of these should be. Like Crater Maker, Abrade, Sudden Shock, all very viable options, and again, I also considered something like Roast that just like gets a big creature dead as well. All right, I hope this kind of showed off some of the power level of the deck. You know, a 3-2 is an okay finish, but kind of the strength of a deck like this one is you can queue very, very quickly. So like yesterday, I probably played something like 5 leagues. I think I got two 4-1s, a 3-2, an 0-3, and either another 3-2 or a 2-3. I think a 2-3. So you kind of like plow through leagues very, very quickly with this. So like don't get discouraged if you pick this up for a league or 2 and you have a bad league. Like that's just something that that occurs. So Dismember is something that I would consider. However, I don't think I want any more self-life loss in an Ancient Tomb deck when you're like trying to play the Dismember to stop the early aggressive creatures that are a problem. I don't think that's a super viable choice. The 1 additional mana isn't really all that big of a deal for this deck because like you have the Chromox, you have the Lotus Petal, you have the Soul Lands. So like paying 1 more mana to just like have a better removal spell than Dismember is probably where I want to be at. All right, folks. Again, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here tonight. The stream was a little shorter than usual. I'm going to go ahead and just call it here. Still kind of working on getting better. I will be back on, what day is today? I will be back on Wednesday. I don't know with what exactly. We'll see if I end up getting a donation deck list for that. Otherwise, I might keep the stream short for the next couple of days while I'm recovering and play a little bit more Red Prison. But thank you all for joining me tonight. I'm going to turn you over to AKA Yanni, who is going to be playing some Eldrazi Post. I think they're a small streamer, so we'll kind of surprise them with a host. And if you enjoyed the content tonight, please consider following. I'm streaming Legacy 3 days a week. It's all I play on this channel here. And if you really like what I'm doing here, consider doing something to support me, whether that's, you know, retweeting when I go live, subscribing to the channel, or doing a donation deck list to have what you like to see on screen. Cheers, folks.